Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are going to be looking at Glitch's upcoming Pixel 2.0 anniversary collection as well as a couple of extras. So the main Pixel 2.0 collection is a 7-piece lineup down here which consists of 5 jelly polishes, a silver linear holo with iridescent flakes, and a shimmery pink magnetic topper. And for the extras, we have a community voted on polish, a NailStuff Canada exclusive polish, and 3 new Smoothie blurring base coats. So as expected, there is a lot to go over. Timestamps for everything will be in the description box, but for now, let me just show you the swatches. Starting with the Pixel 2.0 collection, first we have Mystic Mirror, which is described as a silver holo polish with scattered orange to gold to green iridescent flakes. This one is actually being described as being sheer enough that it could be worn over the toppers, but as you can see, it is really full coverage, so I didn't end up trying this like layered over the polishes. I just built this up on its own because at least to me, that first coat was just very, very full coverage where I don't know, I just don't think it would make for a great topper. Keep in mind, I am heavy-handed though, so if you do thinner coats, I guess this could have a topper potential, but it looked pretty opaque for me in just 2 coats, and I really love the iridescent flakes in this. Now for the jellies, the first one we have is Darkness Weeps, and this is described as a deep, cool red jelly. This one had a really great formula where, as you can see, it is very highly pigmented on the first coat here. It's not super sheer or thin looking, which is sometimes a complaint of mine with some jellies, though that could just be personal preference. Having a thinner jelly can make it easier to layer and blend and whatnot, but I just love when they are a little bit more saturated because you get so much more color payoff with less coats, but it still maintains that very glassy and juicy, squishy jelly finish. And you can see here on the 3 coats, it just deepens the color even more, super rich and seductive, though I did notice some tiny flecks of pigment, I think mainly on the first coat, but it was much harder to see them in real life. Then we have Pass the Torch, which is a rich orange jelly. This one was so gorgeous, again had a really nice formula, very highly pigmented, I would say decently self-leveling as well. I think if I'm looking close enough, the very center tip of my nail looks like a little bit lighter compared to the edges, but it just didn't look as uneven or splotchy as like other jellies that I've tried. So overall, I think this did have a really fantastic formula. It evened out beautifully in the 2 coats and provided so much color payoff, again, while still being very glassy and squishy. The next jelly we have is Pick Your Poison, which is described as a deep emerald green jelly. I did kind of struggle with the formula on this one on the first coat, where I think maybe I just didn't grab enough polish on the brush and my application wasn't as smooth and even. So you can see the first coat is a little uneven looking, and I kind of overcompensated on the second coat by applying too much polish. So if you're more careful with your application, I feel like this could pass on 2 coats, but I did end up doing a 3rd just to even it out a bit more and also deepen the color. Since this one is so dark, I feel like it does obscure the nail line pretty well, but it still looks very glassy and jelly. Then we have Do I Impose, which is a rich cobalt blue jelly. So you can see this is another super dark one, very similar to the green in terms of that saturation and pigmentation, and also kind of similar in terms of formula, where this time I did have a decent amount of polish, but it still wasn't as even looking, or it didn't self-level as smoothly as the first 2, for example, but it is only the first coat. The second coat definitely did even out a lot better, and again, this just provided such a gorgeous jewel toned blue shade. I just loved how glassy this looked, and I feel like this is like a solid 2-coater for most people, though I guess again, depending on your application, your nail length, you could need a 3rd coat, which I did end up doing. I was just curious to see how dark it would get, and I feel like it really obscures the nail line. And the last jelly we have is Revolutionary Optimism, which is a deep blue-toned purple jelly. So this is another super dark, richly pigmented jelly shade. Again, not the most even looking on the first coat, or maybe the most self-leveling, but it did look a lot better after doing the second coat, though I would still be careful not to have too much polish because that could lead to some pooling on the sides, which I feel like was starting to happen here. So I did end up flipping my thumb like upside down so the pooling could sort of refocus onto the center of my nail. So I sort of forced how self-leveling this was, I guess, because of gravity. But either way, I also did a third coat for this one just to make sure it is a little bit more evened out. And again, shocker, this is super, super dark on that third coat. You could barely see nail line. And rounding out the Pixel 2.0 collection is Bless This Mess, which is described as a purple to pink to gold to green magnetic pigment over a pink to orange to gold to green aurora shimmer in the background. This one is also described as being an intentionally sheer base so that it can be layered over the jellies, but as you saw from that first coat, there is like a decent amount of this dark pigmentation. So I did end up building this up on its own, but I am also going to be showing this over the jellies as well because I feel like, you know, it is a pink shimmery magnetic topper, so we're going to use it as a topper. But here it is in more extreme lighting, so you can see more of those color shifts in both the magnetic and the background shimmers. And for the unmagnetized and velvet swatches, I just did the 2 coats, which again, you can still see some nail line. Over white and black, I feel like it's pretty expected that it's not going to look great over white. Definitely a little blotchy looking, but it works great over black. And then over the jellies, I'm going to be showing them in the cat eye on the left and velvet on the right. And I feel like you can see that it does darken the colors a little bit more, but you still get a lot of contrast from the actual magnetic shimmer and shimmery background. And here it is in the glass bead effect over Revolutionary Optimism. Definitely really love this color combo the most. So since we have a little jelly lineup, I figured we could do another rainbow gradient just to see how these apply. So let me apologize first because my hands are going to be pretty shaky. I've just been busy cleaning this morning. Also, my nails are kind of stained. I tried to lightly buff them. So, you know, keep in mind this might affect how the polishes look, but it should be fine. So overall, my first impressions from using the jelly so far is that they remind me a lot of Starrly's jellies, for example, even Morgan Taylor's, just where they're, you know, slightly more on the pigmented side. Okay, sorry, let me just do this here so I'm a little more steady. But yeah, overall, I like how pigmented these are, and like I said, they remind me of those other brands, which, you know, I personally really do like. Mainly the rainbow. The obvious color that we're missing here is yellow, so I figured this nail is not going to be the most pleasing to look at, going straight from orange to this darker green. So yeah, I didn't have high hopes for that nail specifically, but these other nails I think have, you know, more natural color gradients, so they're gonna blend in a little bit better, smoother. And I know I only did this rainbow gradient video just a couple of weeks ago, like it hasn't been that long, but I'm already kind of forgetting, so I'm gonna need to go back and double check my video to see if I did a second coat on top of this and then the coat of butterfly taco and then the third coat, which is like the jelly sandwich. But here's a little look at the first coat. Definitely a lot of color payoff, but you know, not the smoothest blends. So let's see how the second coat looks. Here is the 2 coats of the Glitch Pixel 2.0 jellies. I ended up doing the purple and red on my thumb here. Pretty decent blending. We had a yellow. It would be a lot smoother in these two, or this nail specifically. So yeah, let's see how they look now with the jelly sandwich. It looks a lot better on the 3 coats, especially with like the color blending. Again, maybe, you know, with the exception of my ring finger because it's just so stark. I love how dark and juicy these look. It's just So gorgeous. Like you can still get a good amount of the Holo sparkle, though in some areas it does look a little bit, I don't know if like muted is the right word, but you know, it's just kind of harder to see maybe some of the sparkle, but for the most part, it's still very hollow, super juicy and glassy. I think I am going to stick this next to the collage that I did in that previous rainbow jelly gradient video just to kind of see how they compare, because like I mentioned before, it just, you know, reminds me of the Starrily or Morgan Taylor jellies, specifically like these darker shades. But for the most part, I think these blended pretty well. Like, you know, you can see the differentiation between the colors in some of them. Like maybe it's really stark in my pointer finger going from the blue to purple, not as stripy. Like I think this finger is actually the most stripy looking. The others seem to be a little bit better blended in. You know what I mean? So yeah, pretty good for some nail art. Now for the extra polishes, the first one here is called Violet Tendencies, which is described as a warm purple jelly base with a kitchen sink of blue iridescent flakes, pink iridescent flakes, raspberry pink large hex glitters, silver hollow flakes, and a mix of violet hollow hex glitters. And this one was the result of some community votes earlier in the year. I'm not sure if it was like in their Facebook group or the Reddit page, but it was made over the course of multiple ranked votes for colors, finish, prototype choices, and the name. And it's a celebration of Glitch's first birthday and the community that helped us get here. And I absolutely love this one. I think the colors are so stunning. I mean, it's kind of giving by Pride. So the color combination is everything to me. The formula was okay because it is so incredibly packed with the flakes and glitters. It is going to be a bit finicky. So as you can see, I pretty much got it opaque in 2 thick coats, but you might be better off doing 3 thinner ones. Then we have Fall For Me, which is the NailStuff Canada exclusive polish. NailStuff, if you don't know, is a Canadian stockist of these different indie brands. So while Glitch is available through NailStuff for Canadian shoppers, this is the only polish that will be exclusive to NailStuff's website and won't be on the Glitch website. NailStuff does ship to the US, but unfortunately, due to the recent 50% tariff stupidity, it just might not be the most feasible. But anyway, this is described as a deep purple jelly base with a linear hollow and a multi-chrome pigment going from purple to pink to orange to gold to green, which I wasn't able to capture all of the colors on camera, but I could see them in real life. And finally, we can look at the new Smoothie base coats, which are ridge filling and blurring base coats. The first one here is Coconut Lavender Smoothie, which is described as a cool white. Initially seeing it in the bottle, and I guess also reading lavender in the name, I swear I could see like a hint of purple in here, but I do also agree with calling it a very cool white. So I feel like calling it Coconut Lavender is just the perfect name to capture this color. I was a little nervous on the first coat because it didn't look as self-leveling or even. Like I had a little bit of a bald spot on the left edge of my nail, but I did apply a little dab afterwards and it did self-level beautifully. So I think this has great potential to be worn either alone as a base coat or built up in 2 or 3 coats. The next one we have is Strawberry Banana Smoothie, which is the pink ridge filling base coat. I would say this one looks a little bit more sheer or maybe less creamy or milky compared to the last shade. Like there's a certain level of glassiness to it, although the last shade, even on 3 coats, I feel like you still could see some nail line. So that is expected because again, these are blurring base coats. They're not meant to be fully opaque, but just to help obscure the nail line a little bit more, which you can really get a sense for here on the second coat and even more on the third coat, which you'll see in a moment. Naturally, I love this one. I love a sheer kind of pink, and I thought this one was just such a cute shade, being ever so slightly on the warm side. And lastly, we have Mango Peach Smoothie, which is the warm peach base coat. This is another cute one that I initially wasn't sure if I was going to love, because normally I just go for, you know, a sheer milky white or a sheer pink. This one being a little bit more of this warm peach color, you know, I wasn't sure if it was gonna clash with my skin tone or something, but I actually found it to be a really flattering shade. Maybe the name is also doing some heavy lifting because I love Mango Peach, and just the idea of calling these smoothie base coats, I don't know, there's just something so yummy about them. Also, forgot to mention that these smoothie base coats are made with hibiscus flower extract and olive oil esters to help strengthen and nourish nails, as well as squalene to hydrate and fortify the nails. Moving on to comparisons, I really don't have anything like Mystic Mirror, so I figured the closest glitch I had was Carnations in Bloom, just mainly for those large iridescent flakes. But the bigger comparison I wanted to show was with the new brushes, which I can't believe I forgot to mention. But moving forward, Glitch is going to have these slightly thinner and slightly elongated brushes, so you can see they're a little bit thinner, like I said, and also less dense from the side, so they won't have as much polish on the brush, which can lead to flooding. Now getting into the jellies, we're starting with Darkness Weeps, and I had to see this next to the Starrily jellies, so I have a Flame on the left and Bloodbelly on the right. Here I have one coat of each because I thought it'd be easier to see the undertones in them, where Darkness Weeps is a little bit more sheer, but on the second coat it does build up to look really similar to Flame. Not an exact dupe, but definitely much closer than Bloodbelly, which is darker and more berry. From ILNP, I first pulled out Dahlia from the Thorns collection, but that is just much too dark. So I thought I could also show it next to Cherry, which is more of like a true cherry red. So this is 2 coats of each. I think they look more similar on camera than they are in real life. Then from Cirque, I pulled out Wine Jelly, but I forgot how dark and berry that one is, so I didn't end up comparing it on the nail. I just did it with Lucky Jelly, which is their true red jelly. It is a little bit more sheer than ILNP's Cherry, for example, so on the nail it's a little bit lighter compared to Darkness Weeps. Then from Cracked, I pulled out Shmexy, which is their most recent jelly that came out, as well as Grenadine, which is their true red jelly, I would say. I feel like it does lean slightly warm, but it's not as red-orange as Tomato, for example. But either way, these don't compare. Grenadine is too light and Shmexy is too dark. Moving on to Pass the Torch, I immediately had to see this next to Morgan Taylor's Miss Sweet Cheeks from their Keep It Juicy collection, as well as Holo Tacos in my Peelings, because both of these are deeper, warm orange kind of jelly shades. So as you can see on the nail, Morgan Taylor is a bit darker, more of that rusty orange color, so Holo Taco is a little closer, but a little bit more sheer. For some lighter orange jellies, I pulled out ILNP's Tango and Cirque's Saffron jelly, which I know look very yellow leaning in comparison. I guess they're more tangerine oranges, while Pass the Torch again is more of that warmer orange. For Pick Your Poison, I first wanted to see this next to Starrily's Crystal Jelly, which is their dark green jelly, except it's not a true green. It's definitely very teal leaning in color, so just much more blue toned than the Glitch, for example, but kind of a similar level of saturation. From Cirque, I have Kelly Jelly on the left and Forest Jelly on the right. As I'm sure you can tell, Kelly Jelly is just much too bright, more of like a spring-summer kind of green, while Forest is a bit deeper, a little bit more olive or mossy in its undertone, so definitely not dupes. For more neutral, dark greens, I have ILNP's Ivy and Morgan Taylor's Big Bang Watermelon, which I feel like are definitely closer in terms of that neutral green. Maybe Ivy is a little bit more blue toned, but the bigger difference is that both of those are much darker and more saturated, where one coat of the ILNP or Morgan Taylor looks like 2 coats of the Glitch. Moving on to Do I Impose, I thought the closest dark blue jellies to this were Starrily's Bluefire Jelly and ILNP's Midnight Ink, because they have a little bit of this like almost cerulean color. Even though I know the Glitch is described as a cobalt, it just seemed to fit better with these, but neither of these really are dupes. For reference, here it is next to Cirque's Cobalt Jelly, which is a true cobalt blue, as well as Midnight Jelly, which is a deeper navy leaning blue, but it's a little bit more dusty and muted, kind of grayed out. So you can see that these also do not compare. They're just very different shades of blue. I think, again, some other shades that might be closer are Cirque's Indigo Jelly and Morgan Taylor's Blue Crush Rush, which definitely have a closer color match, though the bigger difference here is that Cirque is a bit more sheer. Again, this is 2 coats of each, so I ended up doing a 3rd coat of the Cirque, and I feel like it just looks so close to the glitch. It's not 100% or like a 1-to-1 dupe, but definitely really similar. And lastly, from Cracked, I wanted to show this next to Sloe and Bloop. Sloe being a darker shade of blue, but it's a little bit more purple leaning, and Bloop is a little bit more in that cerulean family, but it's just a lot lighter and more sheer. I would imagine Midnight Phase is probably closest. For Revolutionary Optimism, I initially just pulled out Starry's Crown Jelly since I thought the color was an exact match, but I remembered the glitch was described as a blue-toned purple, so I figured I could also show it next to Starry's Moon Jelly, which is their blue-toned purple. So to me, Revolutionary Optimism looks much more warm-toned, more similar to Crown Jelly, maybe just a little lighter. For other deep purple jellies, I then pulled out Cirque's Royal Jelly and ILNP's Nightshade, which, as I'm sure you can already guess, is going to be much too dark. I think doing like 1 coat of Nightshade could kind of work, but I feel like it's never as even coverage as other jellies. So between these, I would say Royal is closer. Here's a quick sneaky comparison of Bless This Mess next to an upcoming Cracked Pink Magnetic Topper, which I promise is not a collab shade or anything like that, but I shared it recently, so I wanted to share it again, clear the air. The biggest difference is that Cracked does not have the background shimmer. Next, for Violet Tendencies, I was immediately reminded of a couple of glitch flaky bombs like Labradorite Dust or Infinite Baths from the more recent Summer Boardwalk collection. They are really different in the bottles though, so to get that purple base, I decided to layer them over Revolutionary Optimism. It was definitely more successful with Labradorite Dust because I think Infinite Baths just has too much of a blue overpowering base, but I ended up doing another coat of Revolutionary Optimism over Labradorite Dust, and I feel like it got a little closer, just a tiny bit darker. To get more of those pink raspberry kind of flakes and glitters, I decided to compare this next to Fallen Rose Petals from their groundbreaking spring collection. Obviously that one is much more berry red toned. It's really missing a lot of the purple, the electric blue flakes, so I thought I could add a coat of Cuticula's Glacier, which is this aqua blue flaky topper. Really loved the color combination here and the contrast, but it's not a solid recreation attempt. I think the flakes in Violet Tendencies are more cobalt. And for more recreation attempts, I pulled out a couple of glitch flaky toppers like Be Gay, Do Crime, and Mayflowers. And again, I decided to do jelly sandwiches with Revolutionary Optimism since I thought the purple was just really similar to Violet Tendencies, but the flakes in the toppers are just not as striking in color as Violet Tendencies. And the only other dark purple flaky I thought to compare it to was Prism's Fangtease from their Bloodlust collection. That one has more of these pink and purple iridescent flakes. There's no blue or additional hex glitters. I feel like you guys know that I love Fangtease, but I feel like it almost pales in comparison to this glitch. Then for Fall For Me, which is the NailStuff exclusive shade, this immediately reminded me of Keys to the Kingdom from the Palestine collection, and also kind of Lavender Menace from the Pride collection, but it's a lot more similar in the bottle than it is on the nail. Here you can see that Keys to the Kingdom is kind of like the lighter sister version of Fall For Me, where it's just a bit more sheer in the base, possibly with more of a pink shimmer, but in the bottle they both look purple. Lavender Menace just has a deeper charcoal base because it is a magnetic. And even though Fall For Me isn't a magnetic, I thought it kind of looked similar to Mooncat's electromagnetic fur ball from their recent Planet Noir collection. They definitely have a really similar vibe with this super dark base, a more purpley pink fuchsia shimmer, but the Mooncat has these additional copper flakes. And finally, for the base coats, here is Coconut Lavender next to Mooncat's Getting Even Nail Primer, which is their pink ridge-filling base coat, so you can see it's just much more pink. Other shades it reminded me of were Crack's I'm Shy and Lavender Chai. I'm Shy is definitely a much more whitened pink kind of shade, but it is more of a crelly, while Lavender Chai has a more similar, very whitened lavender color, but that one's a bit more sheer. So Coconut Lavender is kind of a combination of these two cracked shades. And for reference, here it is next to Special Occasion, which just came out last week. That one is also a very whitened pink. For Strawberry Banana Smoothie, here it is next to Mooncat's Getting Even, which as you can see is just so much warmer toned in comparison, a little bit more saturated. For cracked shades, I first pulled out Crack's Ridge Filler base coat, which is a pink tinted base, as well as She Doesn't Even Go Here, which is not a base coat, just a pink sheer jelly. But as you can see, these two are a bit cooler toned in comparison, a little bit more white based as well. The only actual pink blurring base coat that I have is Polish for Days Cotton Candy, which is a cotton candy bubblegum pink, so it is a little bit cooler toned in comparison, but there is also a decent difference in their coverage, where here you can see the one coat of each, and the Polish for Days is just already much more opaque compared to the Glitch. I feel like doing the two coats of the Glitch matches the one coat of Polish for Days. For some other pink jellies, I pulled out ILNP's Pink Slush, which is a warm tone pink, but that one's a bit too warm. And then I pulled out Crack's Whimsy from a previous Hella Handmade shop. I feel like in the bottle, it kind of looked like a similar shade or tone, but Whimsy is just much more sheer and a little bit more white base, so I think it looks cooler. And then I remembered I had Bubblegum Yum Yum, which is sort of this medium pink that I don't remember if it's described as a jelly or a crelly, but I feel like it is pretty buildable. So it ended up looking the most similar to Strawberry Banana Smoothie. Here you can see it in the one coat and then two coats where they just have a very, very similar amount of coverage to them. I would just say the cracked is a little bit cooler toned. And lastly, for Mango Peach Smoothie, I first pulled out Olive Ave's Crystal, which was a sheer peachy kind of jelly shade, but that one is much lighter, as you can see, a little bit more yellow leaning in comparison. So for some warmer peach shades, I pulled out Crack's You Want a Peach of Me and Cirque's Peach Jelly, which you can immediately see in the bottle. These are much more closer looking to each other, but on the nail, I feel like there is a big enough difference here, even on the first coat alone, where the Glitch has the most lightest or white based color to it. Like you can already see there's more of that warm peachy color in the Cracked and Cirque, which in my opinion isn't the most flattering, especially if you are just doing one coat. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Glitch's upcoming anniversary releases. Everything in this video is going to be launching this Friday, August 28th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And as a reminder, I am an affiliate with Glitch, so if you do want to shop any of these or anything else while supporting me and my channel, you can do so by going through the link in my description box or using my discount code YOGI10 to save 10% off your order. And as another reminder, the only polish that won't be available on the Glitch website is Fall For Me, since that is the NailStuff Canada exclusive polish, so it'll only be on the NailStuff website. And unfortunately, due to the tariff situation, it's just going to be absurdly expensive to ship, because NailStuff does ship to the US if you are curious. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on these. Overall, I thought they were just really great polishes. I guess starting with the collection, you know I love a jelly lineup, so I was really excited to see these, and they had really nice formulas overall. I would say the pros for me are definitely the more saturated kind of pigmented jellies, where you just get really great color payoff in like two coats alone. But looking back and kind of comparing them to other jellies on the market, I feel like the formulas could be a little bit better as far as like self-leveling. So I'm hoping that with adding like a couple of drops of thinner, that'll kind of make the viscosity improve a little bit more so that they do end up self-leveling better and you don't necessarily need 3 coats. But obviously with jellies and how sheer they are, you know, it can just be like a preference thing, like the way that I'm applying. But overall, testing them out, I feel like they were just really solid jellies. I also really love these smoothie base coats as well. I feel like I'm just the target demographic for something like that because I love like a classic your nails but better kind of look. I'm always gonna love a sheer pink and have several in my collection. And it is nice to have these like different options as well with having like a warmer pink and then that light peachy color where I feel like it is just so incredibly flattering. So hopefully that'll be a nice option for some people who don't want something that's like super white based like coconut lavender because, you know, depending on your skin or undertone, it can maybe just look a little too stark. So having the warmer peach or pink shades I think would be really great alternatives. And I think my top favorite release from all of these is Violet Tendencies. I just was so blown away seeing the polish in the bottle. Even though at first I did kind of have that feeling of like, okay, this is like another intense flaky bomb, like Brie clearly loves them, she does them really well, but seeing that this one was like the community voted polish, like it just made it so much more special and somehow it's just even more glorious than like the other flaky bombs that they've done so far. And I know at this point it is kind of a joke, especially in like the Holo Taco community, that the fans will always vote for like a purple polish. So it's kind of funny to see, you know, a purple polish for the glitch community, but arguably this one is really unique and so breathtaking. So yeah, overall a really great selection of shades coming out soon, and I would love to hear your thoughts about them down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!